friends, welcome to this episode of ADHD, Autism, and Anxiety, Breaking Out of the Box. I can't tell you how excited I was to meet the two people who are our guests on the show for this episode. They actually interviewed me for their podcast a few weeks ago, and there are really no words that are adequate other than to say that I fell in love with these human beings and the work that they're doing and the energy that they have for so many reasons. And I asked them if they would come and visit my podcast and tell the story of Polaris Academy. And they kindly and graciously agreed to do so. And so we're in for a treat today and a heartwarming story of how family and friendship and autism have created the most miraculous school choice opportunity in Arizona. So grab your tissues, settle down in your chair. This is a great story because of great people. Okay, so Nathan and Brad, I know that Nathan, you're the one who's going to need more of a minute to get your words together. So Brad, will you start?
Fair. Thank you.
That's, if you know Nathan, that's not true. The guy is so quick. And I've always been very impressed working with Nathan. So I'm so sorry. What was the question? You kind of threw me off when you said that about Nathan.
Really?
He's an attorney, and he always has something to say. And I say that with love. I say that with love. He always has something to say.
Recovering attorney, if you will. I'm a recovering attorney.
So, anyways, I don't get stumped that often, but that stumped me. So, anyway, I'm so sorry, doctor. What was your question again?
I was just thinking maybe at the beginning of the podcast, you could both introduce yourself. And I thought maybe Nathan would be touched by these words. So I was going to let you, as the sidekick, start by just saying, why are you involved? Who are you?
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you. My name is Brad Broyles, and kind of one of the co-founders. I'm the CFO of Polaris Academy, and I do all the human resource of Polaris Academy. I'm kind of responsible of hiring all of our great teachers, our staff, help them with training, implementation, and make sure that they do it what we call the Polaris way. And we have a podcast called the Polaris Connection, like you said, and kind of our main focus is to reach out to our parents. When we started into the school system, we realized that there was a big void that parents wanted to understand what we were teaching, and we wanted to connect that through our podcast. So excited to be here. We're a big champion of what you do, doctor, and we love being part of your story, hearing what you do, and how you have a great impact in the community.
All right, awesome. So Brad, you're like the operations guy, and you make sure that what happens at school has integrity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and there's another person that we need to mention too, Aaron Kazmarek, who's our COO. Also a co-founder and a big part of the story of Polaris Academy and a big reason why it's successful. Just definitely wanted to give a big shout out to him. Basically, kind of what I do is, my background is in finance. I was a special asset manager for a commercial bank during the downturn of the market. Have a master's degree in real estate development and a bachelor's in accounting and finance. So I really like numbers. I enjoy spreadsheets. I enjoy being with people. And backgrounds mostly in real estate and business development. So when I was working at the bank as a special asset manager, I was what you called the pooper scooper. So when things go bad, I had to go and fix it. So I would go and work with companies, get them viable again. Either we would sell them off or they would, be able to operate like they need to. So it was actually a fun job. I really enjoyed it.
Shameless plug. He was also an officiator for college football and was even offered to be an NFL referee. So, unofficially, we kind of refer to Brad as Coach Brad.
Yeah. So I'm a big football nut. If you ever want to talk to a football nut, talk to a football official. And so have that background. I coach high school football now, with my son, which I really enjoy. And and then 6 kids, beautiful wife, just trying to do the best I can.
Love it. Love it. All right. Brad, what would you say about Nathan? We're going to let him introduce himself here.
Oh, man. Okay, here we go. How long do you have?
That's a dangerous question.
I am so excited for this. Oh, man. How long can I go? Okay, well, Nathan, all joking aside, I would say Nathan's probably the smartest guy I've ever been around. And so there's an old adage, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but there's an old adage that I heard in business a long time ago: find the smartest person in the room and make him your partner. And that's kind of been my experience. Now, it's funny how we got connected. His wife, Darcy, and my wife, Dusty, were like best friends in high school. And so over time, then, Darcy marries Nathan. I think even Dusty might have said that at one time that you didn't deserve Darcy, or I don't know. There's something there.
We're not going to go down that rabbit hole. I think I've earned her respect now.
You do. And so anyways, that was the original connection. So as then my wife and I got married, Darcy and Dusty stayed pretty close friends. And I always saw Nathan from afar, very successful real estate developer, successful businessman. He was in a few little things. And I always had great respect for him. Well, then when I was building up my real estate business, I remember I was trying to do a deal, and like a real estate deal. And I kept bugging Nathan because I knew him. And I was like, hey, man, here's this cool, I found this opportunity. I really want to get involved with it. And Nathan, I took him out to lunch, and he was like, Brad, when are you going to stop talking to me as an investor and talk to me as a partner? Let's do this together. And that was kind of the genesis of kind of how we really started working together. I was like, oh, perfect. You're right, Nathan. Let's do this together. So we did a few real estate deals together, kind of formed a company together. And then anyways, a really good friend. Nathan is, I see all the behind the scenes that Nathan does. He's very caring. I tease him a lot because he's an attorney, but
was an attorney.
But just a very kind individual. I'm very excited I've always been proud to call Nathan a friend. Is that a good intro?
I'm at a loss for words, but thank you.
You can pay me later.
It's funny, Doctor, you kind of introduced this idea of Polaris and this school and this thing that we started. And what you're not hearing in either one of our backgrounds is educational experience. And I find myself really appreciating the name of your podcast, breaking out of the box. I think it took people not inside the box to understand how we needed to break it. And so what we are not as school professionals, we don't have a background in education. Brad, to kind of place all the pieces, I was just the dad with a kid on the spectrum that had this idea, which I'll walk you through in a second. Brad was the reason I stepped forward with it, because he was the business acumen side to say, yes, Nathan, this is possible and it can exist in a business structure. Aaron Kazmarek, who we mentioned earlier, was our academic resource of here's how you do this in a school setting. And those three pieces coming together is why it exists. And take any one of those out and it wouldn't. And it was kind of I don't know how much you believe in fate or what your religious backgrounds are, but this was something that I kind of felt called to do. And as we have walked down this path, it's something that's just pulled us further and further along. So I can't thank Brad enough. And it's, my story, I don't know if you even want me to jump into that or if we're just still in background mode, but my story was as far from education as you could possibly think. And when I stumbled across the idea that became Polaris, it just became all-consuming, and it's been a wonderful ride ever since.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of what I think makes your story compelling, though, right? Because there are a lot of people who are in the traditional box of education who don't have the skills that your leadership team does. And so they have a heart and a passion, and maybe they have an understanding for special ed or kids with autism, but it takes a lot more than that to create a successful school that is a business. And so the part that you've shared this morning is really relevant, that the three of you came together with varying expertise and obviously realized you can bring in the education part, right? But not every person in education can bring in the business side. And so your story is unique from the beginning, in the sense of it starts with a really solid grounding for building an organization, for building a company, for building, I'm going to put this word out here because I think, we're not talking about business in the sense of profit before people, but there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of finance, there's a lot of operations, and it's part of what makes your story unusual is how the three of you and many, many, many other people came together.
Yeah.
So I want to, at this point, ask one of you to tell us, what is Polaris Academy, right? Like, give us, the top 10 facts, help that person who's never heard of Polaris Academy understand, where are you? What do you do? Who are the kids? That kind of thing, if you can, please.
Yeah. Brad, do you mind if I take this one?
Can I lay the foundation real fast? Though?
Yeah, sure.
Real quick, because I think this is really, really important. I just wanted to back up just before we get to that question, Doctor, is when Nathan and I were doing real estate, we were building a bunch of stuff, and we were building like self-storage units. We had land deals that we were doing. We had apartment things that we were doing. I don't know if it was you or me, but we kind of felt like there was a void. We felt like there was something missing, like we could do more with our life, right? Like we can do, like it was good what we were doing. I felt like we were really successful. But I remember just kind of mentioning to Nathan, like, man, can't we do something more? Like, can we build something that's better for the community? Like, it's great to do development. There's nothing wrong with that. I love it. But it was like, we kind of, I don't know, we were working together in this small office, and we're like, man, can we do something? Like, we were exploring different businesses and like, what can we do? And I didn't know the struggles that Nathan was going through internally as a father with an autistic son. In fact, 3-4 years ago, I didn't even know, honestly, what autism really was. I didn't understand the struggles that parents were facing. I didn't get that, but Nathan hit it so well. We should say he masked it very well.
We're good at that.
And I didn't quite understand it until Nathan kind of started opening up to me in the world of autism and him as a family, as a parent. And there was just this drive, like we just kind of got this drive, like we can do, here it is, there's a huge problem, and we want to help families solve something. We want families, and it was just like, again, I kind of reach it as a friend, seeing my friend struggle, that I didn't understand his struggle and his wife. And I'm like, we can do something about this. Anyway, now you can start.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I could talk accolades of my respect for everybody that's jumped in on this cause, but to answer your question directly, Doctor, what is Polaris? What makes it different? It all started with a frustration, and that sounds a little odd. My wife and I were looking for school options for our son. We had tried homeschooling, we had tried public school, and each one came with its own set of challenges and concerns, and it was always like we're trying to fit the round peg into a square hole or vice versa. Like there was always something missing. In homeschool, it was too hard being the parent and the provider at the same time and wearing so many hats. It was tiring, it was overbearing, it was straining the relationship. And frankly, we weren't qualified to deliver everything that he needed. In public school, we loved that he was around typical peers, but around third grade, when he became aware of his differences, he kind of self-isolated. And so most autism parents have this wish that if we just stick our kid with the quote unquote normal kids, they'll just figure this thing out. And it's this pipe dream we all have that we just want the autism to like go away. We just want to stick them in the normal and let them blend and they'll assimilate somehow. And that doesn't happen. They are different and unique. And the more we try to make them not who they are, the more we struggle with developing them because we're not addressing the real issue. And then we looked at private schools, and the private schools in the world of autism, it's a spectrum for a reason. It's a wide range. And it was a struggle finding even there a spot where he fit, where he belonged, and where it wasn't just a form of glorified daycare, or where, the people didn't set their expectations lower because it was special ed. Like it was frustrating. And we found a spot we thought he'd get accepted. And we'd gone through like this 4-month process of getting him ready and going through interviews. And at the end of it, we got denied. And I was livid. And I just remember, I can tell you the exact parking spot where I was standing when I looked at my wife and says, you know what, that's it. Let's just do our own. And it was set out of frustration. I don't think I was even serious, but that seed got planted. And I couldn't stop thinking about, well, if I was to do one, what would that look like? And Polaris started on this idea. It's a what if. And all these players, Brad, Aaron, and so many others I could list, are what's made the what if possible. But the idea was this: what if in one spot, just at school, you could combine ABA resources, speech resources, occupational therapy resources, all the traditional and non-traditional supports our kids get, that I had to go so many places to find. What if I could just bring them all together in one spot? Because our single biggest frustration, doctor, was that we always felt like we had to sacrifice one thing to get another. Like in school, to get supports, we had to pull him out of class, which would isolate him from friends, put him one-to-one with a provider, and that was on the provider schedule, not the schools. So he was sacrificing class time, sacrificing friend time to get these resources, but that caused their own problems because he was missing core learning time, and he felt isolated, and he felt called out, like, here's the kid going for his class and everybody's watching him, so it's hurting his self-confidence. And even all the one-to-one therapies are a little bit of an issue. I love that intensive therapy can be helpful, but when you pair a child one-to-one with an adult in early years, and you do that consistently, they almost learn to be antisocial because their safe space is one-to-one with an adult. And so we watch our child start pairing with his teacher, or with the principal, or with the coach, or even the janitor, but not his peers. And we go to the park, and instead of talking to kids, he talks to parents. And I've talked to so many parents that have kids on the spectrum. They're like, yeah, my kid too, my kid too. And autism is not an inherently antisocial condition, but the way we treat it embodies antisocial behaviors because we are separating, we are isolating. But what do? Because that's the only way to get these supports. So like, I'm always giving up this thing I want for this thing that I need, and it's tiring. And then to not have that happen, you have to stack all that stuff outside school hours, which makes for 10-hour days, and I can't do extracurricular activities with my other kids. And doctor, I see you nodding. Like, all these parents, we have these shared pain experiences where, I can't get everybody in the same room. And even if I want these supports, I have to qualify for them and I have to get assessed. And then either the state or my insurance company tells me what I can and can't have. And then that limits what the providers can and can't do. And so I'm having to advocate, no, but this is what I want, but this is all I get. And eventually they age out and you don't even get those supports anymore. And at the end of the day, you just are in this constant fight. So the what if was, what if you don't have to qualify for services? What if insurance didn't have a say in what you can and can't do? What if ABA support wasn't limited to just medical necessity and they could just use ABA techniques in any aspect, educational, social, vocational? What if you could sit down a teacher, an ABA specialist, a speech path, and an occupational therapist all in one room, and together they would cohesively craft an academic and therapy blended plan that they would all execute together in collaboration? And what if you could do that in a group, social, peer environment and not one-to-one isolationist? That's the what if. And the answer to that what if is, that is Polaris Academy. How we did that was we just hired all of these individuals, academic and therapy combined, and we made them one cohesive staff that doesn't rely on insurance, that doesn't rely on any state Medicaid program. It's all funded within the confines of what our education system allows, so it doesn't cost parents anything more than any other traditional school. But what they get is this comprehensive all-in-one thing that they don't have to be assessed for, they don't have to qualify for, they don't have to advocate for. They get everything their kid needs in one spot, and they get to be part of the process and bringing it to life. That is the so what of Polaris Academy.
Now, I want to highlight something that's important. Take all the great energy that Nathan has, his background and everything. Now he brought that to our office and saying, this is what I want to do. And I'm like, what's autism?
Yeah, no. So hang on.
That's what he had to work with.
Just let me compare and contrast, right? So, but that's an important piece. And Brad, I don't think Brad realizes how important his involvement was early on. So, Doctor, here, my wife and I we're like, is this even possible? You know, is this something, because no one's done it that way before. Every other school I've found uses traditional approaches. They have these supports maybe at the school, but it involves pulling your kid out, and you only get those if you qualify, and they're subsidized through the state. Like, we all know that system. And it's not that it's bad, Doctor, but it's broken, because whenever you isolate or separate your kid, well-intentioned or not, it tells them something's wrong. Like, you can't do that here. You don't belong with that group. And the very nature by which we deliver these supports in a traditional model ingrains a sense in them that they're different, that they don't belong together, that they're not part of the group, that something needs to be fixed with them. And I think that part of it's broken. One of my students just the other day is like, Mr. Palmer, we need to make a new shirt, and it needs to say, it's normal to be weird. And so, if nothing else, we've normalized that process. So to Brad's point, I bring in this idea, like, hey, I have this idea to start this autism school. And, you know, like he said, we had been talking about what's something more we can do. And to his credit, he doesn't say, Nathan, I don't know what I'm doing. Nathan, that's not a field I can do. Like, he doesn't bow out. He like jumps in head first into this world he has no idea that he's getting involved in. And his only question is, great, tell me what that means. And if that's not a sign of like faith and trust in a friend, I don't know what it is. But his question was so funny, because Brad's question was, what even is that? Aaron Kazmarek, who was our school director, who, by the way, did not have proficient background in special needs education, and I didn't want him to. I wanted him to bring the traditional academic experience to these kids to find out what they're capable of. And then I had another professional just in the autism world, but without any academic experience, just to say, let me bring my expertise. And it was that blended group. And each of them asked a question. And here's the irony. Brad's question was, what is autism? What is ABA? What is speech?
What's occupational therapy? I had no idea.
Aaron, my educator, his approach was, I don't need ABA. I don't need that stuff. I'm an academic. We can do all that ourselves. And Rachel Krupe, who was our first director of behavior services, our board certified behavior analyst, she's like, yeah, Nathan, you're not crazy. I have a kid on the spectrum too, and I wish this had existed when he was in school. Like, this isn't crazy. It's normal. Fast forward 3 years later, and Brad's question now is my question, because we're breaking the box of traditional service. We're inventing a new kind of ABA. And so I'm finding myself asking, wow, what can ABA be now? What can we make it? Because it's not what it used to be. Same with speech and OT. We're by creating this cohesive group, we're blending neuroscience and behavior medicine. And we're essentially, I think we're inventing a brand new autism support through academics. So his question is now my question, which is the ironic part. Aaron's question of, we don't need it. Now he's like, no, Nathan, we need more. Yeah. We need this support and that support. And like, he's all in, because he's seen the magic of what happens when now the academic teachers have these supports in class and what they can craft together. And Rachel, who's like, no, this isn't crazy. Rachel's like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy, because it's taken off in a way none of us expected. So we've all like flipped scripts, but it's because we're going down the right road, and Polaris has just become a movement. I mean, it's just in Arizona right now, but I can't wait to champion this approach as much as I can to voices around the country. And I think it is the right way to educate not just the autism population, but just neurodiversity in general.
I can't even wrap my hands around what that would look like and feel like. I have two quick comments I want to make because I don't want to take anything away from the two of you telling your story. But the first thing I want to say is the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry met last week or the week before. And one of the statements they issued after the meeting said something like this. I'm not quoting directly and I'm not going to go find it, but it was basically like, there is such a shortage of psychiatric providers, and there is such a need for behavioral support that we are issuing a statement today to say that we need to, yes, include ABA, but we also need to look at other behavioral supports. Mm-hmm. And the two that they mentioned by name were both behavioral interventions, supports that included parents and that were more based in kind of real life. Because one of the things that often people want to know about ABA is this going to generalize? So as the two of you are talking, and you're talking about sort of a new vision for ABA, and I think ABA as a field is, grappling with a lot of serious questions about what from our past is valuable and what can we transform into to serve, the kids that need us now. And I don't want to turn this into a conversation on ABA, but as you're talking, I'm just thinking what you are doing at Polaris Academy is completely consistent with this statement from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, who said, we need more boots on the ground, day to day, in real life support for kids. And I'm sure that they said with disabilities or with mental health, but it certainly is applicable to kids with autism. And I'm just so impressed with the integration of that and your vision. That's one piece I want listeners to be thinking about is, when a lot of these school choice programs opened up, it opened a lot of places that were more of the same, right? But that's not what Polaris Academy is. I have one more comment, and then I have many more questions for you. I cannot imagine as a parent what it would be like for my child to have benefited, both my children, my son and my daughter, to have benefited from a united, cohesive team of professionals, because we had that experience you're talking about where, now you get pulled out for counseling. Now you get pulled out for your math disability. Now you get pulled out for OT, for handwriting, and neither one of my kids ever went to a school that was specialized for autism. We did all the things. We did public school. We did private school. We did charter school. We did a different charter school. We did a different private school. But it was always the pulling out. And, the idea, I'm just sitting here kind of overwhelmed with emotion at the idea of my kid could have benefited, and your kids at Polaris are benefiting from a leadership team that has a cohesive vision where people aren't like, okay, I'm going to do 30 minutes of speech here, or I'm going to do 20 minutes of speech here, or you're going to come here and you're going to practice handwriting, and then you're going to go out on the playground and you're going to be with your teacher. It creates this piecemeal approach to trying to not just educate kids, right? But to raise kids. And there are times I can think of where the different professionals had different agendas even, And so
they don't all play nice together.
No, they don't. In fact, that's a whole big rabbit hole that we can speak forever about.
Yeah. But at Polaris, that's the what if that you're saying, yes, we are implementing that vision and that goal here. Okay. I don't want to get too much in the nitty gritty, but I want you to give, please, our listeners a sense of, so where is Polaris and who can attend Polaris and how many students are there? And, I just want to give people a sense of what the scope is today, knowing that when you're back next year, the scope might be double that. Right now, today, summer of 2026, where is Polaris located? Who do you serve? Those kinds of admission type questions.
Sure. So we started in Mesa, Arizona,
which we call the Silicon Valley of autistic education and development.
Yeah, we got a little lucky, Norrine. Mesa, Arizona was the first ever autism certified city. That as a city, their city officials went through a certification process for their public spaces, their staff, to become an autism-friendly city location. I think Phoenix, Arizona has since done that, and some other cities nationally are starting to, but they kind of pioneered that thing. And so we got lucky that we were in such a supportive area. Mm-hmm. And it began with a single building. It was a little 10,000 square foot office building that we renovated and gutted and rebuilt.
Well, can I tell a little bit of that story?
Yeah, yes.
This is a good story. So again, our background is real estate. And I've always believed I believe that there's a spiritual component on all things, in particularly real estate. And I always just kind of have this belief that if you're a good person, you can inherit the land. Like you're there to do good, right? And so we're doing our research, and I'm a research nut, and I'm like, okay, if we're going to do a school, we need to make it simple for moms. And if I can find a building that was between like a Target and a Costco, because when you do real estate, you always do what's called, like, you want to find out it's what do they call it? No, I can't think of the word. The psychographic of the consumer. So you always want to think, okay, what is the experience of our consumer? And I was like, man, if we can find a piece of property on a freeway where moms already are by a Target and a Costco, that'd be awesome. That would be super awesome. Well, all of a sudden, and then the other thing, so I did my research and I figured out, like, okay, we really want to be in a 10,000 square foot location. Like, it needs to be about 10,000, right? And it'd be great if we had expansion opportunity too. So we can start with 10,000. And yeah, don't ask me why 10,000 works. That's a different story. But, and then I was like, man, if we can find one, well, all of a sudden, just out of the blue, this beautiful property shows up on the market, 10,000 square feet between a Target and a Costco, with a lot next to it that's perfect for expansion, which was being sold by two different sellers.
But went up at the same time.
Yeah, like that never happens. And I was like,
talk about the power of intention, right? I mean, it was sublime.
When we both went there, we're like, this is the place.
And not only that, Doctor, but just to, again, whether you believe in fate or not, we have the gall to say we're interested in buying this thing. We don't have the funds to do it.
We didn't have any money.
And on a handshake, I'm just going to call him our North Star supporter, comes out of nowhere and offers to buy it for us without loan terms, without contracts, just on a handshake to get us started. And
really, you're not telling the story of the why, because when
I could tell lots of side stories.
But when Nathan shared his vision, because again, Doctor, you talk about vision, and I agree with that. I've always believed, I have a concept that I believe in called, strategy. Culture will eat strategy for breakfast. Okay, I always believe that if you have good culture, if you have a good vision, and you work with good people, good things happen. And so Nathan shares his vision, and I didn't know, but I guess this individual, his son was autistic, and he's like, wow. If we had a school like that, that would make a big difference. What can I do? And again, he becomes our North Star. But anyways.
Yeah, this was someone that was a mentor friend of mine that I would bounce ideas on, that I actually called to just ask, am I crazy? Like I'm not an educator. This is not my field. Should I even be doing this? I was just asking him for it's going to be okay. And what I got 5 minutes in was, Nathan, I'm in, what do you need? And I was like, I'm not soliciting. He's like, I know you weren't, but this is something I want to support. And so there so many things like that happened that made this possible, Doctor. Like our principal.
I was going to say, can you tell the Aaron Kazmarek story real fast?
I'm going to do an aside just to kind of. Yeah, go ahead.
If you let me. Okay. Because there are a few people out there who are a little bit like me. I want to sit here all afternoon and talk with you about the story, but I want somebody to walk away knowing, okay, started in Mesa.
What? Yes. Started in Mesa, 10,000 square foot building. We started with 110 kids. That was our capacity. We filled up in the first few months. And I wasn't sure, one, that this was going to work. Like Brad modeled it, but on paper is one thing and practice is another. I wasn't sure that combining these staffs was going to produce the result we wanted. And I wasn't sure how many other parents out there had my story. So we started with that capacity up to 110 kids. And we hit it so fast, faster than I ever thought possible. And so we realized we need to work on expanding. So we did. We started drawing plans for that lot next door to double the size, add another 20,000 square feet on top of the 10. And in the middle of doing that, one of the local public schools became aware of what we were doing. And what was so gracious is they did not see us as competition. They saw us as collaborative. And that started a dialogue where they actually allowed us to come onto public school campuses, which had space I never could have gotten in the private realm. I mean, a private development, we know, but there's nobody that develops privately that leaves 5 acres open for a baseball field. That's just not something that's cost efficient in the private development world. So the school says, we've got these junior highs and they're not filled to capacity. If you'd like, we will rent you out space. And so they leased me 25,000 square feet at not one, but 2 campuses. So we went from 10,000 to 60 in a year. And we're just finishing developing those spaces now, and they both open this fall. So we have been running at 110 student capacity for a year and a half with 200 kids on a wait list, like double our capacity, just waiting for a seat. And this fall, the reason we're so excited before the show started, why I'm like out of breath, is because we've been developing 50,000 square feet over the last 6 months, and it's been a ride. And so we will now have room for not 110, but for 450.
Right.
What's good and bad about that is we're already 80% filled and we haven't opened yet. And so we are now talking to other school districts that have heard our story, and even looking at locations in other states potentially. So what started as an idea has turned into a movement. By the time we do this next year, we might be talking about the next 2. So our goal is to get to 1,000 kids in the next 2 years and then see where it goes from there.
Yeah. And then on top of that too, this needs to be mentioned. We started last year, we started what was called Starlight Academy, which is an early learning center to kind of work with the little kiddos of early intervention from preschool, kinder, and first grade. And then we had a loud voice that wanted us to get involved with more of an ABA clinic. So we do have what's called Starlight Behavior. We got into one-to-one ABA therapy to prepare them as a titration into an academic setting, which has created a very unique challenge that I didn't understand that now we do. So we kind of have, so right now we have 5 locations, 3 Polarises, 1 Starlight Academy, and then a Starlight Behavior.
And you're pre-K through 12.
Yeah. Our junior high school opens this year. So my son, when we built this, was in 8th grade. Last year, we extended it to 9th grade because I'm not kicking him out of the school we built for him. And we're fully accredited. We can issue state recognized diplomas, college prep. I mean, we're a legitimate educational facility. Well,
and I feel like this story has had so many spiritual components. Like I always, so another part of that, other than the expansion, but we talk about cohesive. We talk about working with like-minded individuals and professionals. And that is really hard. And it's mostly because since I champion more of like our human resource, hiring, you mentioned something before, Doctor, that I just want to touch back again, is a lot of these wonderful professionals, they really think it through the lens of what they have their degree on. And to bring them together, and I didn't know this before, but there seems like we found so many good unicorns when we first started that now that as we're hiring and training new staff, that's really our secret sauce is our staff. Our staff are incredible, and they're cohesive, and they want to work together, which is really, I didn't know this until I got in the middle of it. That's really not the norm that you see out there. Typically, your BCBAs don't really work well with your occupational therapist. The occupational therapists really don't collaborate with speech therapists, and speech therapists really don't collaborate with teachers, and that stuff doesn't exist. When we got into it, I thought, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Let's just collaborate. And I guess I got into it very naively, because as we hire staff, I see that and I'm like, okay, if you can't collaborate with other professionals, then you're not a good staff member at Polaris Academy. And so we really screen our staff people well. And the great thing about this movement, and I like how Nathan calls it a movement because it really is, we've had these wonderful professionals reach out to us on their own and say, wow, we see what you're doing. This is exactly why I got into the field in the first place. How can I get involved? And it's been absolutely incredible. I mean,
You are so right about how out of the box this is. One of you mentioned, the name of my podcast, Breaking Out of the Box, and that for me is such a frustration, because I think people do have a box. And, in my experience, there's a lot of pretty rigid boxes in education. And these kids go here, and this teacher does this, and this school does this. And, I'm not saying kids with autism are all more different than kids with Down syndrome or with, learning disabilities. But I'm going to say what has been my experience, which is that kids with autism can really be uniquely different from each other. And having that collaboration where you have 3 or 4 professionals who see this student, this child, from multiple angles and then bring it together is so important. And this is not today about Russell coaching, but it is something that's so fundamental to what we do at Russell Coaching for the same reasons that you all do it at Polaris Academy. We had kids come who they'd had speech therapy, they'd had occupational therapy, they'd had tutoring, they had a school plan. They were, seeing a medical professional, they were seeing a therapist, but the picture wasn't coming together in a holistic way. And so very early on, I made the decision that we were always going to be willing to be the team lead for a student. We were going to be willing to reach out to the psychiatrist, to the ARNP, to the therapist, to the school. Because even though, coaching in many ways could be seen as sort of the lowest person on the totem pole, I was determined that we were going to at least bring everyone together. And I think that has been super valuable for us as an organization, because people have come to better understand what it is that we do with academic ADHD, executive functioning coaching. But it has also changed the relationship between the professionals in the student's life where we do that. And I just can't imagine, again, as a mom who has been through so much advocating for kids, having that in place at Polaris and how reassuring that would feel. You have kids and you think, I'm going to fight with my kids about dessert and curfews and behaviors. I did not think I was going to be fighting for my kid with everyone else. And that's a lot of what it felt like. Was even when people were polite, it still felt like fighting. I know we could be really polite and call it advocating, but there was a lot of fighting that was going on. I'm fighting to get this IEP. I'm fighting to get this service. I'm fighting to get the records of when did he actually see the therapist at school. I'm fighting to get better symptom control with medication. And so
it's funny you touch on that. So one of the first things when we did our policy manual, which I know that sounds really boring, but give me a second to explain why I'm going there. One of the first sections we wrote was, who is our client? And our educator right after that, well, that's the kids. That's who we serve. Is no, our client is the parent. That's who we serve. And when you think in business, you have to, your clients are buying something, right? So then what is the product we're offering? Well, the product we're offering is their kid. We're delivering a service to them, but the parent, they are the client. And so everything we do is for them. That advocacy piece, that the IEP world, as well-intentioned as it is, I think is broken. That you have to sometimes hire a professional to advocate to get things on a form is wrong. And I also hated how IEPs only focus on deficiencies. So to your point, having all these people together, the parent doesn't have to come and advocate. The parent gets to be involved in the process, and all the supports are there. The reason you're so successful, Doctor, that hub, bringing people together, you and I are doing the exact same work, and we're taking the load off the parents from having to be that bridge, making sense of all these things out there. And that's where this parent advocacy piece comes from. When they just get to come and be part of the creative process and tell us what they want as our client so we can deliver. It's not advocating. It's the customer's always right, and how can we help you? And, one thing that I really love that we did our very first year, we wanted to replace the IEP. Not because it's bad to look at accommodations, but because how it went about it, I thought was broken. And we replaced it with something that we call an SEP, or a student empowerment plan. And the first section of that plan doesn't look at the deficiencies. It instead recognizes, what are the proficiencies of your child? What are their strengths? What are they good at? Because if we can't find and focus on that, we're already doing something wrong. And a step further, how are we tailoring their academic experience to support and grow it? So we're setting goals not just for deficiencies, but for strength building, because otherwise you're only it's just this negative connotation. Now, yeah, there's limitations, and yes, we can set goals around that, but not at the expense of forgetting about targeting strengths and building on those and progressing those. So, it's a parent-first approach, and that's what the outside the box is, right? It took parents to come in and say, this is for us, not just for our kids, and the kid is who now we're all focused on helping.
Well, it's so interesting, right? You could make an argument, if you wanted to have a radical conversation, that public school, the client is the state. Now, we don't have to get into that because that's not what today is about. But the idea of the parent being the primary stakeholder, because here's the thing, right? We also, as the parents of kids with autism, we do know our kids. Yes. We know our kids, right? And I was never about to let that go by the wayside. I took my 3-inch binder with pictures of Ethan with me to every single school meeting. And I didn't have a lot of confidence, but I had a lot of determination. And, we made it work up through the first half of 6th grade, and then it just wasn't possible to make it work, and we started homeschooling. But to your point, what made homeschooling work was we did start with my kids' strengths. My kids are both great readers. My kids both love to accomplish things. My kids do not like to watch videos. My kids do not want to color maps, right? And I was able to take their very high abilities, their spikiest, highest ability in reading and writing, and translate that into, okay, so how are we going to use those strengths in our homeschool so that they can get a college prep education? Because that's what they needed, right?
Exactly.
But we had a dreadful experience in 4th grade where the 4th grade teachers used videos to teach, and they did not want my son reading books, and they would take that book out of his hands and make him watch the video. And
I want to be careful to parse a distinction here. because I'm not, and I want to be really clear for anybody listening, I'm not anti-public education and I'm not anti-public educators. In fact, if anything, I can tell you all the educators I've met, it takes a passion to want to influence the lives of kids. And the more and more I talk to educators, regardless of what field they come from, they all share similar concerns that there are constraints in the systems they operate in that dictate what they can and can't do. And so public education as a system is designed as generalized education for everybody. And frankly, I think it's unfair to expect the level of differentiated education we need for our kids from the public model. They're not built and equipped for it. And it's not that they don't want to do it. It's that, frankly, the edict they have to educate everybody just doesn't allow for it. And while the IEP was our best effort to say, given the tools we have, these are the tools we can use to help, what we've looked at is, no, you just need different tools. And these aren't tools that a public system could ever integrate on a global scale. It's cost prohibitive. Right. So it allows us not to be, again, we're not competitive with, but we bring something different to the table because we offer our teachers resources they didn't have in that setting. And so, not surprisingly, most of our teachers have come from public education. And I love that because there are academic benchmarks and proficiencies there that I wanted to bring to our kids' experience, but now equipping them with all these additional resources and abilities to differentiate education. Norrine, it has been so cool to watch what they've done with their craft, given the freedom to explore and to innovate. These people are the best people I've ever met in my life. And so I believe in educators. I think that they've just been handcuffed, in a sense, on the things that they're able to deliver in a traditional public model. Does that make sense?
I am 100% in agreement with you. When I meet a person in education, public, private, charter, whatever it is, that person, almost 100% of those people, individuals, care and they are knowledgeable and they know. But the system, and I can differentiate this from what you've said, but in my mind, yes, the system is broken and the system is quickly going bankrupt. But the people are assets and resources and the heart of it. But when you are in a broken system and one that's going bankrupt, that's a hard tension to hold. I feel for educators. Yeah.
And, it was interesting. It changed our perspective when we were working with Mesa Public Schools on these lease agreements. We were able to go behind and kind of peel back the onion and see kind of behind the scenes. And my hat's off to those public school entities. They do have a challenge because they're trying to meet the needs of the masses. And some of them are progressive, and some of them still want to do the same thing that they did back in the 1990s. It was nice to work with a good school district like Mesa that was forward thinking, and they were trying to think ahead. And like Nathan said, when we saw what they were, they looked at us more as a collaborator and not competition. And we're not competition. We're collaborators. We wanted to bring these resources to Mesa Public Schools, to those students. And Mesa was like, we see this value too. We're looking ahead. We can't keep doing education like we did 20 years ago. And so it does take those type of school districts to think ahead. What's the next 20 years going to look like in those school districts? How can we better give resources to parents? And how do we better outreach to the community of our neurodivergent community or our special needs communities? And you really need those type of school districts that think ahead. And I'm really grateful for Mesa Public Schools to do that. And what we want to do is kind of be that champion. We have many causes, but that's one of our causes is like, hey, here's what we can do to these type of school districts and how you can think ahead and reach a population that, frankly, you really can't reach right now because you just don't have the resources.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think it's our background that made some of that possible because, I'm not a career educator, neither is Brad. And so when Aaron, the career educator, would say, this is what we do, we got to go, yeah, but why do we do it that way? And same thing from a business standpoint. Well, why do you do that this way? And the behavioral health support, right? But why do we do this way? And it was in answering those questions, we found ourselves going, because that's just how it's been done. And we've got to say, then what can we do that's different? And so this, we joke, we're constantly in this startup mode. I mean, we're now going 3 years in, and every year we're finding these new things that are possible with this blended support staff. And so we're just growing into this thing, like what's possible next year, what new boundary are going to break next year, what new integration we're bringing next year. And it's just been it's been a ride that's been one that has been the most fulfilling I've ever done.
It has. And kind of one, if I can share a quick little story about a parent that made a big impact in my life. As we're doing Polaris Academy, we were in first year and we just started. We were at an activity with the kids, and I was just talking to the parents, like, hey, how's this going on a one-to-one basis? And this one parent came up to me and he's like, when I was growing up, my mom would rule by the chancla and my dad would rule by the belt, right? So then he had kids. And what did he do? He ruled by the belt, and his wife ruled by the chancla.
What's that mean?
It's sandals in Spanish. Yeah, well, just for all those, chanclas means sandals in Spanish, right? Anyways, and then he had an autistic son, and that approach didn't work anymore, and he knew it, and he didn't know what to do. And he's like, I knew I had to change my parenting approach, and I didn't know what to do. And there came Polaris Academy. And he says, the one I'm really grateful about Polaris is it taught me how to be a father. And that was kind of the start of like, that really hit me hard. And it kind of started like, we need to reach these parents better. We need to share our resources better. We need to be more collaborative. We've got to be better in outreach. And that was kind of the reason why we started the Polaris Connection. That had a huge impact on me. I'm like, okay, how can we work with these parents better? Because we can do more.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes perfect sense that your primary stakeholder is the parent, because that parent of a kid with autism needs support, and they need something that works for their child, right? But they also need support and education. I mean, I remember, sending Ethan to school thinking, school will know, school will take care of it, right? And right. You guys are starting to find a way for school to be able to offer a true partnership and leadership in educating parents and supporting parents. I never felt supported as an autism parent. I felt supported as a parent at that school, like, we love you because you're at our school. But as an autism parent, I never felt that way. And so that's why I think what the two of you and all of your team and your investors are doing is so very revolutionary, because, I know the lay of the land a little bit. My son turned 18. I have been becoming an autism expert for, a good 13 years. And I know what's out there. And because of my business, I also know what's out there in states that have school choice. And I just know that what you're doing is incredibly innovative. And I think it is in large part because you have what we would call in academia a multidisciplinary team, right? You have people coming at this from lots of different angles, not just people in the box trying to recreate the box in a different color. And so, as we wrap up today, I just want to say how deeply impressed I am with your work. And then I want for the two of you to provide the information where people can go to learn about first Polaris Academy and then also Polaris Connection. So can you do that?
Yeah, fortunately, they're the same place, polarisacademy.org. That has all the information about our school, our program, our podcast. It's all ingrained in one thing. Even our early learning center, there's resources there. That's the general of it. The Polaris Connection you can find on all major streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music. We're out there. We'd love to have people subscribe, and it really is that parent resource. It's not for us. It's a passion project. And it's all about just bringing awareness to this, and wonderful guests like yourself, Norrine, that we've had on, and others that just specialize in normalizing what has been an abnormal experience, and just letting us know that there's success out there, and there's reason for hope, and there's reason to believe that we can do more.
There is reason to believe. Okay, let's wrap up the podcast today. Both of you tell me 2 things that you would love for the universe, or however we want to refer to that. What 2 things would you love to show up on your doorstep to help you further this mission? What would you want to have? Do you need an investor? Do you need a particular specialist? What do you need? If you could say, I have a magic wand and I want this, I want each of you to tell me 2 things you want for Polaris Academy.
Well, I'll start first, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
What's been on my mind, this is just things that's on my mind lately, right? We went from a staff of 30 people to 60 people. Now we're going to have a staff of over 120 employees. And we have a lot of interest to go to different places. I don't need and we have a lot of interest of people who want to work with us, which I love and I'm grateful for, and I love it. And I always tell staff, I don't need a BCBA. I can find a BCBA, but what I need is a Rachel Krupe, for example, who's our director of BCBA. I need that personality. I need that person who has love and drive and purpose just as much as we do. I can find an occupational therapist. I can find these speech therapists, but we need people who believe in our vision and our mission. So in our handbook, we have this as our vision, and I'm so proud of it, and I believe it. You see these words that says empower, navigate, elevate. These are the 3 driving, mission, vision that we stand for. And it says in our handbook that my driving purpose, and I always tell staff, when we hire you, I want you to memorize this. And if you would say it anytime, anywhere, I will just give you the biggest high five. That our driving purpose is to empower, navigate, elevate everyone within our environment. That's what we stand for. If you're a great person who has love and passion for making a difference in this life, we can help you learn the skills. But I need those people. So that's what I would yell out to the universe. If we can have more people with these driving love and purpose-driven individuals, like it took us, we left really successful careers to move forward in this driving purpose. Like Aaron Kazmarek, he did not need to be with us as our chief operating officer. He was retired. He was already going to live in I don't know what he was going to do. Knowing him, he was going to follow a reggae band forever.
Probably.
But he could have. He did not need. None of us needed to do this. We did it because we love. It's a passion project for us. We want to make a difference, and we need people who have their driving purpose is to empower, navigate, elevate everyone within their environment.
Okay, you need people. Okay. Nathan, what do you want? What are you putting out to the universe?
Doctor, I find myself in this weird spot thinking about your question, because the inclination is for me to just say we need funds and we need spaces, right? Those are the easy 2, right? Because I can't serve more kids if I don't have spaces to serve them, and I can't have the spaces without the funds to develop them. And when I say funds, we don't just occupy an existing school. In fact, we don't look like most normal schools. And we didn't touch on this in the podcast, but we remodel our spaces specific to the neurodiverse population. I mean, we do a heavy amount of autism architecture integration, which we could do probably an entire podcast on just the architecture of making the space itself accommodating for the style of learning and teaching that we have. And it's not cheap to do. So my go-to was I need space and I need money. And because there's no shortage of kids and families, but the second I had that thought, it's funny, I just had this impression that's going to be taken care of. We have operated so much on faith on this mission that if I could get that, that'd be fine. But the broader mission of Polaris is even if we knock this out of the park, and we become, the gold standard, I will never have enough room inside of my walls to service all the kids that need these resources. I need other people doing what we're doing. So if I could answer that question at my core, honestly, is I want awareness. I want people to know what we're doing. I want people to know why we're doing it. Frankly, I want everybody, even competitors, to know how we're doing it, because I need them to do it too. There are more kids than I could ever reach, even in my most wild, successful dreams. We're going to be successful, so I don't want to ask for something that I think I already have. I want others to jump on board and to do what we're doing and to follow our lead. So I want awareness. The second thing, and maybe this is a selfish thing, I'd love prayers. I think there's a power in intention, and I think the more people that are rooting for our success, the more the cards will continue to fall in our favor and the path will continue just to be laid out for what we're doing. So I don't know if that's a little bit too out there on the request, but honestly, if I'm going to be true to our purpose, it's awareness and prayers.
No, absolutely. Be true, be authentic, be real. Thank you both so much for having done that for the last hour, sharing your stories that don't fit in the traditional box of we developed a school, right? I am deeply, deeply impressed with the collaborative team you've put together and the vision. That's, I think, where I find so much value in what you're doing. It's not more of the same, right? It's a revisioning of what can we offer to families with autism that will work for them. The vision is why I wanted you to come on the podcast. And I am deeply thankful to you for taking so much time on a Saturday. Our listeners aren't going to know that we record on Saturday, but I'm going to say it. On a Saturday in the summer, you came and you gave an hour and a half of your time to tell the story of Polaris, which is going to be a story that revolutionizes how we educate students with autism and how parents feel about school and their kids with autism. Nathan, Brad, thank you so very much for coming on my podcast.
Our pleasure, Norrine. Thank you for having us. Thank you for sharing the vision. Thank you for what you bring to the field, frankly. I mean, as much as you championed our story, I can echo yours. The more and more I've been in this field, and I think you share my sentiment, a lot of us were thrown into the world of autism. I say this a lot, it wasn't by choice. We can choose it after the fact, but it wasn't our initial go-to. And for all the others that jump in willingly, that were not thrown in, but make themselves part of this cause, I can't thank them enough. So I appreciate you and everything that you do.